The alien queen's daughter returned alive, and a human stood beside her. The palace itself was a wonder of alien architecture. Towering spires of shimmering crystal that refracted light into hundreds of colors, massive doors that seemed carved from a single piece of obsidian, and gardens where plants pulsed gently, as if alive in a way humans would. Never understand. Queen Lyra stood on the highest balcony, her slender frame wrapped in robes that shimmered like liquid silver. Her eyes, a deep violet that seemed to see far beyond the physical, scanned the horizon. The past few years had been restless. Her daughter, Princess Saren, had been lost in what was supposed to be a routine mission beyond the star system. For 5 long years, no trace of Saren had been found. The palace had grown quieter in her absence. The halls echoed with memories, and even the courtiers tread lightly, as if afraid to disturb the empty space left by the missing princess. Lyra's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden alarm, a sound that shattered the calm of the palace. The crystal gates of the city were reacting to an incoming spacecraft. Lyra's eyes narrowed, and her hand moved instinctively to a communicator embedded in her wrist. "Identify the vessel," she commanded. A young officer hurried forward, his antennae twitching nervously. "Your Majesty, it is not from our star charts. It is approaching rapidly. Unknown origin." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. Unknown ships were rare, but they almost always carried danger. Her advisors whispered warnings of smugglers, mercenaries, and rival factions. But something in the way the ship moved, its precise trajectory, the gentle hum of its engines, caught her attention. It didn't behave like any weaponized ship. It moved like someone coming home. The palace gates opened with a hiss, and the ship descended, landing gently in the courtyard. A cloud of blue mist rose from the ground as the gravity stabilizers engaged. Soldiers lined the marble stairs, weapons raised, faces tense. The doors of the ship slid open with a smooth, mechanical grace, and a figure stepped out. Lyra's breath caught. The figure was familiar. It was Saren. For a moment the queen could only stare. Her daughter was alive. Her eyes, the same deep silver violet as Lyra's, were wide with caution but steady. There was something different, something stronger about her. She moved with confidence and purpose, not fear, and she was not alone. Behind Saren stood a human, a man. Lyra's eyes widened in shock. Humans were rare visitors to this part of the galaxy. Few had the courage or the means to cross so many light years, especially uninvited. The man was tall, with strong features and dark hair that fell carelessly over his forehead. His clothing was simple but functional, and in his eyes was a calm determination. He didn't seem afraid. He didn't seem lost. "Mother," Saren said, her voice steady, carrying across the courtyard. I am home." The queen's throat tightened. "Saren," she whispered almost to herself. "Is it really you?" Saren nodded. "Yes, Mother, and I have someone with me, someone who saved me." Her gaze moved to the human beside her. "This is Captain Elias Kane. He helped me survive when no one else could." The queen's guards tensed, weapons raised. "A human," one of them hissed. "This is a violation. Who is he and why is he here?" Elias stepped forward, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "Your Majesty, I mean no harm. I only helped your daughter. My only goal was to ensure her safety." Lyra studied him carefully. There was something in his posture, in the way he spoke, that was different. Bold, yes, but also honest. Humans were known for their courage, sometimes bordering on recklessness, but this man did not appear reckless. He looked calculated, precise, aware of his surroundings. "Bring them inside," Lyra finally said, her voice low but firm. "We will speak in the inner chambers." Everyone else stepped back. The courtiers whispered among themselves as the group walked into the palace. Saren held Elia's hand for a moment, a silent acknowledgement of their bond before letting go. They were led to a grand hall where the walls shimmered with images of Zarathia's history, battlefields, explorers, and great moments of diplomacy. Lyra gestured for them to sit. "Tell me everything," she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with urgency. Saren took a deep breath. "It was not an accident, Mother. The ship that was supposed to take me beyond the star system, it was attacked. Someone wanted me gone, wanted me lost forever. I survived because of Elias. He risked everything to find me and bring me back." Elias nodded. "It was a dangerous journey. The galaxy is not kind to strangers, especially humans, but I couldn't leave her behind. I followed every lead, every signal until I found her. We escaped together." The queen's mind raced. Attackers, sabotage. For 5 years she had mourned, and now a conspiracy unfolded before her very eyes. She studied Elias closely, trying to discern whether he was telling the truth. Every instinct in her body told her he was trustworthy, but instincts alone were not enough. "Why a human?" she asked finally. "Why did you come? You have no reason to care about my daughter, yet you crossed countless dangers to save her." Elias hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I may not share your people's history, your majesty, but humans have one thing we cannot ignore. We act when we see someone in need. We fight when others would hide. I could not stand by while she suffered. That is all." Saren reached out and touched her mother's hand. "Mother, he saved me. He believed in me and life itself even when everything seemed lost. He is not just a human, he is someone who understands courage." The queen felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, awe, and a spark of something she could not name. Her daughter was alive. Her daughter had survived unimaginable odds, and this human, this stranger, had helped make it possible. For the first time in years, hope seemed real. Before the queen could respond, a warning horn sounded throughout the palace. The outer gates had detected movement, ships approaching in the distance, unregistered and fast. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "They know she has returned," she said grimly, "and they will come for her." Saren's hand went to her side, instinctively touching the energy blade she now carried. Elias moved slightly in front of her, protective but calm. "Then we fight," he said simply. "We fight smart. We fight together." Lyra stood, her robes trailing behind her like a silver river. "So be it," she declared. "If they want my daughter, they will have to face all of Zerathia and all of its unexpected allies." She looked at Elias. "Human, you will stay close. I do not fully trust you yet, but for Saren's sake, I will allow it. Do not give me cause to regret this decision." "I understand, your majesty," Elias replied with respect. Outside, the approaching ships became more visible. Their designs were alien, jagged, and fast, signaling a military fleet. But Elias and Saren shared a brief glance, silently agreeing. This would not be an ordinary battle, and humans had a way of turning impossible odds into opportunity. Lyra's advisors scrambled to form a defensive strategy, consulting star maps and weapon networks. But in the midst of the tension, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. The pulse of life returning to the palace, the spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, the impossible could still be overcome. For Saren, the journey home had not ended, it had only begun. And beside her stood a human, who did not bend to fear, who did not flinch in danger, and who would teach the aliens of Zerathia a lesson they had never expected. Courage and ingenuity were not limited to one species. As the twin suns dipped closer to the horizon, painting the skies of Zerathia in fiery shades of orange and violet, the queen, her daughter, and the human captain prepared for what would come next. The galaxy was vast, full of danger and full of mystery. But for the first time in years, the queen felt something she thought she had lost forever: hope. And hope, as it often does, was the beginning of something extraordinary. The palace of Zerathia was buzzing with activity unlike anything it had seen in years. Servants hurried through the crystalline halls, carrying messages and provisions. Soldiers adjusted their armor and weapons, preparing for an attack that could arrive at any moment. The twin suns had barely risen, and yet the palace was alive with movement, strategy, and tension. Queen Lyra sat at the head of the war council, her violet eyes scanning the faces of her advisors. None dared to speak until she gestured. Her presence demanded attention. "We have little time," she said. "The fleet detected approaching ships hours ago, and they move faster than any patrol we have. Someone knew the princess had returned, and they planned to act." Saren, standing beside her mother, listened intently. The daughter she had been years ago had been naive, trusting the wrong people. Now she had returned stronger, sharper, and more cautious. Her eyes, once wide with wonder, now reflected a mind ready for battle and strategy. She turned to Elias, who was quietly observing the council. "What do you think?" she asked. Elias adjusted the strap of his bag, which carried tools, devices, and other small inventions humans relied on. "The fleet won't just attack the palace directly," he said. "They'll try to divide forces, create confusion, and strike at the weak points. Zerathians are powerful, but they rely on patterns. If we disrupt the patterns, we can slow them down." One of the generals, a tall alien with 4 arms and pale, reflective skin, frowned. "Disrupt patterns? Captain, you speak of confusion. That is not a strategy. That is chaos." Elias smiled faintly. "Sometimes chaos can be the best strategy when your enemy expects order." Lyra's eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with interest. "Explain," she said. Elias stepped closer to the display map in the center of the council chamber. "If they expect a straight defense, we don't give them one. We can move forces in unexpected ways, create illusions of weakness, and force them into mistakes. I have seen humans do this before in smaller battles on Earth. It works because it surprises the enemy. They do not know how we think." The council murmured among themselves. Some looked skeptical, some curious. None had seen humans in action before, and few trusted outsiders with important decisions. "Very well," Lyra said finally. "We will try your plan, but if this fails, it will be on you, human." Elias nodded calmly. "I accept that risk." Meanwhile, Saren moved quietly through the palace corridors. She had spent the previous night resting, but sleep had not come easy. Thoughts of the attack and the betrayal that led to her supposed death filled her mind. She passed rooms that still bore traces of her childhood. The chamber where she had learned to pilot small crafts, the library where she had devoured histories of Zerathia and other worlds, and the garden where flowers glowed in the moonlight. Memories of her mother and her people reminded her of what she was fighting for. Saren paused in front of a small, hidden alcove. From beneath a pile of digital scrolls, she pulled a device, a small, black cube no bigger than her fist. It had been with her when the crash occurred, and she had carried it across light years, hoping it might one day help her understand what had happened. She activated the cube, and a holographic map projected into the air. Patterns and symbols shifted, showing routes through space and regions of activity. She traced a finger over one of the red lines. This is where it started," she murmured. "Someone didn't want me to return." Elias, who had been silently observing, leaned over her shoulder. "Rogue faction," he said simply. "They wanted you gone, that is why your ship was attacked." Saren's jaw tightened. "I thought it was an accident. I trusted the crew. I trusted them all." Her hands trembled slightly. "But it wasn't an accident. Someone betrayed us. Someone wanted me gone." Elias placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "And now you are back, you survived, and we will find out who did this. That is why I am here." Saren nodded, drawing strength from his words. There was something about humans that she could not explain. They were unpredictable, fearless in ways that were unusual, and they thought differently. On Earth, humans had faced countless challenges with limited resources, and often survived against impossible odds. That resilience, that ingenuity, was exactly what she needed. Back in the council chamber, Lyra listened as reports poured in. Scouts had spotted unusual energy signatures near the borders of the capital. Small ships, fast and light, capable of moving without detection. A warning bell rang in her mind. These were not ordinary attackers. Whoever was behind this had knowledge of Zerathia's defenses, knowledge only someone from within the palace or its trusted allies could have. "This," Lyra said slowly, "is more than a random attack. This is a conspiracy." The words hung in the air. The council exchanged nervous glances. Conspiracy was dangerous. It meant that enemies were not only outside the palace, they were inside. Friends could not be trusted. Allies might betray. And the queen, who had ruled for decades, had learned that paranoia was a necessary companion for survival. Elias observed quietly. Humans had conspiracies too, and humans had learned ways to detect them. He knew that the key was observation, careful analysis, and testing assumptions. If there was a mole, they would reveal themselves if pushed carefully. Lyra turned to him. "Captain Kane, do you have suggestions?" "Yes," Elias replied. "First, isolate sensitive operations. Limit who knows what. Second, monitor communications for anomalies. And third, create controlled tests, small traps to see who acts suspiciously. People betray themselves without knowing it." One of the generals frowned. "Tests, traps, this is human behavior." "It is strange and unpredictable," Elias shrugged. "Exactly, that is why it works." Lyra considered him carefully. His confidence was not arrogance, it was knowledge shaped by experience. She gave a slight nod. "Very well, implement your plans, but proceed carefully. The lives of my people are at stake." The day passed quickly. Soldiers practiced new maneuvers under Elia's direction, blending alien strength with human strategy. Machines that had only been operated in standard configurations were adjusted to unpredictable patterns, confusing even the most experienced pilots. Couriers and messengers ran between posts, delivering coded messages that only a few could decipher. Saren observed all of it, marveling at the human capacity to adapt so quickly. By evening, news came of a minor skirmish on the outer perimeter. A group of scouts had been intercepted by attackers, but their formations had been deliberately shifted, forcing the enemy into disarray. The battle ended with minimal losses. For the first time in weeks, the palace breathed a little easier. Yet as night fell, a quiet unease settled over the palace. Shadows moved where they should not, whispers floated through empty corridors, and Lyra knew that the conspiracy ran deeper than they had uncovered. Someone within the palace had orchestrated Saren's fall, and that person had not revealed themselves yet. Saren walked alone in the gardens, beneath plants that glowed softly in the moonlight. She held the small black cube in her hands, studying it. "They wanted to erase me," she whispered, "but I survived. I will find them." Elias joined her silently, as he often did. "You will," he said. "Humans survive impossible odds, and now you are stronger, wiser, and not alone. We have a chance to turn the tables." Saren looked at him, a spark of hope lighting her eyes. "Together," she said. "Together," Elias agreed. Far above, in the dark expanse of space, the rogue faction observed the palace through stealth vessels. Their leader, cloaked in shadow, frowned. "They have returned," he muttered. "And that human, he changes everything." The plan had been simple: remove the princess, weaken the queen, and take control. Yet the presence of a single human had altered the balance of power in ways they had not anticipated. Patience and precision would be needed, but even patience might not be enough. Humans were unpredictable. The rogue leader's eyes narrowed. "We must act faster. The princess cannot escape us again." Back on Zarathia, the palace rested under a canopy of stars. For the first time in years, the royal family was whole again: mother, daughter, and the human who had defied the galaxy to bring her home. The conspiracy loomed, but so did courage, strategy, and ingenuity. And as the twin suns prepared to rise again, Lyra, Saren, and Elias knew that the coming days would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. But one truth was clear: the unexpected arrival of a human had already begun to change the fate of Zarathia. The morning suns of Zarathia rose over the crystalline spires of the palace, casting rainbow-colored reflections across the gardens and halls. The palace, which had seemed quiet and orderly for so long, now buzzed with tension and activity. Soldiers practiced new formations, couriers carried urgent messages, and engineers adjusted energy shields to create patterns that were unpredictable to enemy sensors. Saren walked through the training grounds, observing the soldiers. Even after 5 years away, her knowledge of Zarathia's military was sharp. Yet she could see that Elia's presence was changing everything. The humans' ideas were different, creative in ways the aliens had never considered. Alien strategy relied on brute force, overwhelming power, and precision. Humans relied on unpredictability, adaptation, and clever tricks. It was something new, something unfamiliar, and it worked. Elias, dressed in practical combat gear, was in the middle of a demonstration. He had gathered a group of Zarathian soldiers, showing them how to use their equipment in unusual ways. Energy shields that were normally defensive were repositioned to act as barriers, guiding enemy forces into traps. Small drones, normally used for communication, were modified to create holographic illusions of troops where none existed. One of the soldiers, a broad alien with silvery skin and glowing eyes, tilted his head. "Captain Kane, why would you confuse our own troops with illusions?" he asked. Elias smiled faintly. "Not our troops," he said. "The enemy sees the illusions. They act as if we have more forces than we do. They make mistakes. Humans have used this for centuries: mislead the enemy, create confusion, and take advantage of it. It works." The soldier blinked. It was hard for him to accept that strategy could be so different from what he had been taught. But after seeing the demonstration, he could not deny the results. A small drone created an illusion of a dozen soldiers moving in formation. When enemy scouts approached, they were immediately detected and countered, without any real soldiers being endangered. Saren watched quietly, her admiration for Elias growing. Humans were not stronger than Zarathians, not faster, not bigger, but they had something her people often underestimated: ingenuity. They looked at a problem from every angle and found solutions no one else could see. After the demonstration, Saren and Elias moved to the palace command room, where energy maps and star charts glowed in the dim light. Lyra, already present, studied the approaching enemy fleet. Their movements were calculated but predictable. "They expect us to follow standard defensive positions," Elias said, tracing patterns on the holographic display. We don't. We split forces into smaller units, hide our main fleet, and use the terrain to our advantage. We strike when they overcommit. They cannot adapt as fast as humans do. It's not about strength, it's about strategy. Lyra nodded slowly. She had always relied on her own abilities and the strength of her people, but she could see that Elia's approach added something vital: flexibility. It gave them an edge that brute force alone could not. Saren leaned over the display, her finger tracing a path through the enemy fleet's approach. If we combine your tactics with my knowledge of our systems, we can create a trap, she said. They will think they are attacking a weak position, but it will be a corridor that leads them right into our defenses. Elias smiled. Exactly. Humans call it channeling the enemy. You guide them into a path where you have the advantage. It works best when they think they are winning. The queen watched them, impressed. Her daughter had returned, not just alive, but stronger and wiser. And the human by her side was teaching them lessons none had imagined. The thought was both exciting and dangerous. Exciting because it offered hope, dangerous because the enemy would not wait. That night, the palace rested under a calm sky, but the atmosphere was tense. Scouts had reported that the rogue faction's ships were moving closer, ready to test the palace defenses. Lyra convened a meeting in the central war room, where the walls glowed with energy maps and star projections. "Captain Kane," she said, "how soon can we be ready to implement your tactics?" Elias studied the maps, his mind working quickly. "We can start immediately. The troops need time to practice, but small-scale simulations can be implemented tonight. By dawn, we should have a significant advantage in at least half the perimeter." Lyra nodded. "Do it. I want our forces ready, and Saren stay close to him. He will show you things that will help you survive the coming battle." Saren nodded, her expression determined. She had learned much since her return. Trusting a human was unusual for a Zorathian princess, but she felt a strange bond with Elias. He had saved her, guided her, and shown her a new way to think about problems. The first signs of the rogue faction appeared just before midnight. Small, fast ships darted along the edges of the capital's perimeter. Sensors detected them, and the palace forces prepared. Elias had already set up decoy fleets using holographic illusions and repositioned troops in ways that confused the enemy scanners. The rogue ships moved confidently, expecting easy targets, but they soon realized something was wrong. Sensors detected more forces than should have been there. Drones moved unpredictably, creating false movements. Energy barriers shifted in patterns the enemy could not anticipate. Saren, watching from a control balcony, whispered, "It's working. They don't know where to strike." Elia's eyes were calm, scanning the battle. "Exactly. Humans rely on unpredictability. They will make mistakes. We wait for the right moment to act." The enemy fleet tried to retreat and reposition, but the palace defenses guided them into corridors where they could be countered efficiently. Lasers and plasma cannons hit precise points, immobilizing key ships without endangering the palace. In less than an hour, what could have been a devastating attack was reduced to a manageable skirmish. Lyra observed from her chamber, her pride mixed with relief. "Human ingenuity, it is remarkable," she said softly. "I may not fully understand it, but it is effective." After the skirmish, a council meeting was held to analyze the results. Elias presented his observations, showing where the enemy had faltered and how their strategies had failed. The generals listened carefully, some still skeptical, but all aware that the humans' tactics had saved countless lives. One general finally spoke. "Captain Kane, your methods are unusual but effective. I admit I doubted you, but Zorathia has benefited from your presence." Elias inclined his head. "I only did what humans do: observe, adapt, and act. Zorathia has the strength and technology. I simply added a perspective you may not have considered." Saren smiled. "And that perspective makes a difference. Together, we are stronger." The rogue faction, observing from a distance, frowned. Their leader's frustration was evident. "One human, he is changing everything. How can one human interfere with an entire fleet? They must be stopped, or our plans will fail." Meanwhile, inside the palace, Lyra and her daughter discussed the next steps. "We cannot simply wait for them to attack again," Lyra said. "We must be proactive." Saren nodded. "We have the advantage of preparation now. We can predict their moves, force them into patterns, and strike decisively. And with Elia's guidance, we can think differently than they expect." Elias, listening, added quietly, They rely on predictability. They plan for Zorathians to act like Zorathians. They do not expect humans to change the rules. As the night deepened, Saren returned to her private chambers. She held the small black cube she had carried since her crash. Its holographic map still displayed roots of the rogue faction, faint signals that only she and Elias could interpret. It was a reminder of the danger that had started this entire journey, but also of the power that could turn it around. Elias knocked lightly and entered. "You're thinking too much," he said. "Focus on what you can control. That is what humans do. Control the present and the future follows." Saren smiled. "I suppose I need a little human guidance in that too," Elias chuckled. "Then consider me your teacher, but also your ally." And in battle, allies are as important as strategy. Outside, the twin suns began to rise, painting the crystalline spires in gold and violet. The palace of Zorathia stood ready, its defenses strengthened not only by technology and strength, but by ingenuity, creativity, and human perspective. The rogue faction was watching, planning, and growing impatient. They had underestimated the combination of alien power and human strategy. The coming days would test both sides, but one truth was undeniable. The humans' way of thinking had already changed the battlefield. And for the first time in decades, Queen Lyra allowed herself to feel confident. With her daughter alive and strong, and with an unusual human by their side, Zorathia had a fighting chance against any enemy in any corner of the galaxy. The battle for the future had begun, and its first lesson was clear. Sometimes the smallest differences, human ingenuity, quick thinking, and courage, could change everything. The twin sons of Zorathia had barely risen when alarms echoed through the palace. The rogue faction had begun their full-scale assault. Hundreds of sleek, jagged ships darted toward the capital, moving in tight formations designed to overwhelm the defenders. This was no small attack. It was an attempt to seize the throne, capture Princess Saren, and weaken Queen Lyra's power forever. Inside the palace, soldiers scrambled to their positions, energy shields hummed to life, and tactical holograms displayed the incoming fleet. Lyra stood on the balcony, her robes flowing behind her, a calm storm in violet eyes. "Today," she said, "we fight not just for Zorathia, but for our future. We will not let them succeed." Saren adjusted her armor, her hand resting on the hilt of her energy blade. The weapon glowed faintly, ready to respond at a thought. She glanced at Elias, who stood beside her, calm and calculating. "We can do this," she said quietly. Elias nodded. "We can, but we must be smart. They expect Zorathians to use power and numbers. They do not expect creativity." The first wave of enemy ships reached the outer defense rings. Lasers and plasma beams lit the skies, striking at incoming vessels. Normally, this would have been a battle of brute strength. But under Elia's guidance, Zorathia's forces used strategy and ingenuity. Some ships feigned retreats, drawing attackers into traps. Holographic decoys made it appear that the defenders were weaker than they were. Energy barriers shifted unpredictably, confusing the enemy sensors. Saren led a squadron of elite pilots, flying in precise formations that were unfamiliar to the enemy. "Remember what Elias taught us," she told them. "We fight smart, not just hard." Elias monitored the battlefield from the command chamber. His eyes tracked every movement, analyzing patterns, predicting enemy reactions. "They'll try a flank maneuver here," he muttered. "Move the decoys to the left. That will force their main fleet into a narrow corridor." The enemy followed their instinct, thinking they had discovered a weakness. But as they entered the corridor, they encountered hidden energy barriers, automated turrets, and ambushes from hidden squads. Ships were disabled quickly, their formations breaking apart. The rogue fleet had underestimated the combination of human ingenuity and Zorathian strength. Meanwhile, inside the palace, conspirators from within watched nervously. Some had hoped the rogue fleet would act without resistance. Now they realized that the return of Saren and the presence of Elias had strengthened the palace beyond their expectations. Whispers of doubt filled hidden corridors. If the princess survived, if the human captain succeeded, their plans would fail. Saren's squadron swooped down toward a group of enemy skirmishers attempting to breach the outer gardens. She moved with precision, striking quickly and retreating before the enemy could react. Elias had predicted their movements, and she followed his suggestions like a guide in her mind. Every step, every attack, seemed to be coordinated by something beyond Zorathian training, a human mind. On the ground, Queen Lyra directed energy cannons with incredible speed. She coordinated attacks across multiple battle points, integrating Ilia's strategies with her own experience. "They are clever," she muttered, "but we are cleverer." Hours passed. The rogue fleet continued their assault, but each wave was met with unexpected resistance. Holograms and decoys created confusion. Ambushes and traps slowed their progress. And where the aliens relied solely on power, the humans' strategic thinking disrupted their plans. Ilia suggested a bold move. "We strike at their command ship," he said. "It will create chaos and force their fleet to retreat or risk total destruction." Lyra studied the holographic map. The command ship was heavily shielded, surrounded by smaller vessels. "It is risky," she said. Ilias shook his head. "Risk is calculated, not reckless. If we use their assumptions against them, we can create an opening." Saren volunteered to lead the strike. "I will take a team," she said. "We can reach it through the northern corridor. They won't expect it." Lyra hesitated but finally nodded. "Go, take only what you need. Remember, you are my daughter. Return safely." Saren's team moved swiftly, guided by Ilia's instructions. Energy barriers, shields, and enemy patrols were navigated with precision. Small drones created holographic images of additional forces, tricking the enemy into miscalculating. Saren's squadron struck with speed and coordination, neutralizing defenders and creating a path to the command ship. Inside the command ship, the rogue leader realized too late that their strategy had failed. His fleet was trapped in confusing corridors, his defenses disrupted, and his own forces disoriented by what they could not understand: creative thinking and unpredictability. Saren and her squadron boarded the ship, moving through corridors with silent efficiency. Guards were stunned by the unexpected attacks, giving the princess and her team the advantage. She reached the control room, energy blade ready. The rogue leader stood, shocked, unable to believe that a princess and a human could reach him inside his heavily defended ship. "You should have never returned," he hissed. "I am not alone," Saren replied. She gestured to Ilias, who appeared behind her, calm and confident. "And you underestimated us." The team disabled the command ship's control systems and captured the rogue leader. The remaining fleet, now leaderless and confused, began to retreat under fire from Zarathia's defenses. What could have been a devastating defeat became a resounding victory. Back in the palace, Lyra watched the battles end with pride and relief. Her daughter had returned, stronger than ever. Her people had fought bravely, and the human captain had proven his worth beyond any doubt. Saren returned to the palace, exhausted but triumphant. She stood beside her mother, who placed a hand on her shoulder. "You have done well," Lyra said, "and so has he." Ilias simply smiled. "We all played our part." The people of Zarathia cheered. The rogue faction had been repelled, their plans foiled. And the palace was safer now, not just because of strength, but because of the creativity, strategy, and courage that humans had brought to their side. That evening, as the twin suns set and the skies glowed with vibrant colors, Saren and Ilias walked through the gardens. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said. Ilias shrugged. "You did most of the work. I just offered a different way to think about the problem." Saren smiled. "A human way of thinking, it changes everything." Lyra joined them, standing tall and proud. "Perhaps humans are not so different from Zarathians," she said, "when it comes to courage and determination." The victory had come at a cost. Some soldiers had fallen, and the palace had sustained minor damage, but the spirit of Zarathia was unbroken. And in the quiet moments after battle, a new understanding emerged. That strength alone did not guarantee survival. Intelligence, creativity, and unity could be just as powerful. The rogue faction was not completely defeated, but their plan had failed spectacularly. They would regroup, they would plot, but Zarathia was ready now. And humans, with their ingenuity, had become an unexpected but vital part of that readiness. As night fell over the crystalline towers, Lyra, Saren, and Ilias stood together, watching the stars. They knew that this victory was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges and threats. But Zarathia had survived, stronger than ever, and with a new ally who had shown them a different kind of strength, one that could change the course of the future. Saren placed a hand on her mother's. "We are ready," she said. Lyra nodded, her eyes shining with pride. "Yes, we are ready." And Ilias, looking out at the distant stars, smiled quietly to himself. Humans had always faced impossible odds. And now, in a distant world full of alien wonders and dangers, one human had proven that courage, intelligence, and creativity could make the impossible possible. The battle for Zarathia was won, but the journey for the galaxy was only beginning. And together, Zarathians and humans, they were prepared for whatever would come next. The crystal spires of Zarathia shimmered under the light of twin suns, signaling a new dawn for the planet. The aftermath of the battle still lingered in the air. The faint hum of repaired energy shields, the scent of scorched stone, and the quiet murmurs of soldiers recounting the day's events. But for the first time in years, the palace felt truly alive. Queen Lyra walked through the great hall, her violet eyes calm but watchful. The rogue faction had been defeated, their fleet scattered across the star system. The traitors within the palace had been exposed and neutralized. Yet Lyra knew that peace was never permanent. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges and dangers, and alliances could shift like sand in the wind. Still, today was a day for reflection. Saren walked beside her mother, her armor polished, her energy blade secured, and her spirit lighter than it had been in years. She had faced death, betrayal, and uncertainty, and she had returned stronger. Her bond with the human captain Elias had grown through the trials of battle, and now it was something unspoken but undeniable. "Mother," Saren said quietly, "the people are beginning to hope again. They see that even the impossible can be overcome." Lyra nodded, her gaze sweeping over the council members and soldiers who were busy restoring order. "Yes," she replied. "Hope is powerful, it gives courage, and courage has always been the strength of Zarathia." Elias followed them, walking with a confidence that now seemed natural among the alien palace corridors. His presence had changed the dynamic of Zarathia in subtle but profound ways. Humans, with their creativity and unpredictability, had taught the aliens new ways of thinking about strategy, defense, and cooperation. The Queen paused at a balcony overlooking the city. Below, citizens moved with careful determination, repairing damage and tending to wounded animals and plants. The gardens had been partially damaged during the battle, but Zarathians were resilient. They rebuilt quickly and with precision. The palace reflected their efforts, a symbol of survival, of unity, and of a new era. Saren's attention shifted to the black cube she had carried since her rescue. She activated it, projecting holographic images of the rogue fleet's retreating ships. They were scattered across the nearby star systems, confused, leaderless, and weakened. This battle was over, but the galaxy would not remain quiet forever. She looked at Elias, who studied the projections with the calm intensity of someone always thinking 3 steps ahead. "They are still out there," she said, "but they will think twice before attacking Zarathia again." Elias nodded. "Yes, but this is also a chance to strengthen alliances, to show others what humans and Zarathians can accomplish together." Lyra turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "Humans, I did not expect much when you arrived, but now I see that your people have abilities we cannot ignore. You think differently, adapt quickly, and inspire courage. Perhaps there is more to learn from each other than I realized." Elias gave a small smile. "And there is much we can learn from you. Zarathia is strong, skilled, and wise. A partnership could be beneficial for both our species." Saren watched them, feeling a surge of hope. For years, she had felt isolated, caught between duty, betrayal, and survival. Now she realized that survival was not enough. Zarathia could thrive, and perhaps the galaxy could thrive too if humans and Zarathians worked together. The Queen's advisors gathered in the Great Hall to discuss the future. With the rogue faction defeated, the conversation shifted from defense to diplomacy. Lyra proposed sending envoys to neighboring star systems, demonstrating the power of cooperation and strategic ingenuity. "We must show that Zarathia is not alone," she said, "and that humans can be allies, not threats." One of the generals, still cautious, raised a question. "Your Majesty, will the people accept a human as part of our councils and strategies? They are different." Lyra studied Elias, then nodded. "They will learn to accept it just as we have. Strength comes in many forms. Today, a human helped save our city, our people, and our future. Tomorrow, perhaps others will do the same." The following days were filled with activity. Repair crews worked tirelessly to restore the palace gardens and outer defenses. Scholars and engineers collaborated, combining Zarathian technology with Elias' human inventions. Drones were upgraded with new algorithms, energy barriers were repositioned for optimal efficiency. and communication networks were made more secure. Every corner of Zerathia was being strengthened, not just with power but with knowledge. Saren trained with her squadron, refining tactics that combined human ingenuity with Zerathian precision. Her pilots learned to anticipate unexpected movements, think creatively in combat situations, and trust one another in ways that went beyond traditional military training. The lessons Elias had taught them became more than strategy. They became a mindset. One evening, Saren and Elias walked through the palace gardens, which had been partially restored after the siege. Flowers glowed softly under the moonlight, and water from the fountains reflected the stars above. It was a rare moment of peace, and the weight of recent battles seemed lighter. "You know," Elias said, looking at the stars, "humans have a saying, the strongest bonds are built through challenges. I think we've proven that today." Saren smiled. "I can see that. I never imagined I would trust a human so completely, and yet I do." "You've taught us all something we didn't know we needed," Elias shrugged. "I just showed what humans do best, adapt, survive, and help when others cannot. But you did all the hard work. You fought, led, and made decisions that saved your people." Saren's eyes softened. "We did it together. That's the important part." Lyra, watching from a nearby balcony, nodded silently. She had seen her daughter grow into a leader beyond her years, and she had seen the human captain prove his worth in ways that no Zerathian could have predicted. Together, they had faced impossible odds and prevailed. The Queen convened a final council meeting to solidify the new alliances. Envoys from nearby systems were invited to witness the strength and resilience of Zerathia. Elias was formally recognized as a strategic advisor, a first for any human in the galaxy. His position was not just symbolic. It was a recognition of his courage, intelligence, and the undeniable impact he had on the outcome of the siege. As reports came in from the restored outer regions, it became clear that the rogue faction's influence had been completely broken. Neighboring systems, previously fearful of the rogue fleet, now saw the potential in forming alliances with Zerathia and humans. The message was simple but powerful. Courage, strategy, and cooperation could overcome even the most organized threats. Saren, Elias, and Lyra stood together on the palace balcony as the twin suns began to set. Below, citizens celebrated the restoration of their city, the return of hope, and the promise of a stronger future. "We have a chance to change the galaxy," Saren said quietly. Lyra placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Yes. And together we will ensure that hope remains alive, that courage is rewarded, and that wisdom guides our path." Elias smiled. "Humans and Zerathians, we can accomplish great things, not just surviving but thriving. This is only the beginning." The trio watched as ships moved in the distance, no longer threats but potential allies. Trade routes reopened, communication networks flourished, and knowledge from different species began to blend in ways previously impossible. Zerathia, once threatened by betrayal and chaos, had emerged stronger, united, and ready to shape its destiny. In the quiet moments, Saren activated her small black cube, scanning the stars. Signals from distant systems were now friendly, open to cooperation, and curious about the new alliance. She looked at Elias. "We've done more than survive. We've built something lasting." Elias nodded. "And it will grow." "The galaxy is full of challenges, but together we can face them all. Humanity has always done that, and now we do it with Zerathia." Lyra, standing tall and proud, gazed out over her city. The palace, gardens, and citizens reflected the triumph of strategy, courage, and unity. She thought of the battles fought, the losses endured, and the lessons learned. Above all, she realized that strength alone had never been enough. Intelligence, creativity, and the willingness to work together were what made civilizations thrive. Saren looked to the horizon where the first stars of evening began to twinkle. "This is just the beginning," she said. "Yes," Elias agreed, "and we're ready." Lyra smiled, placing her hands on the balcony railing. "Then let us show the galaxy what Zerathia and humans can do when they stand together." The sun set completely, leaving the sky alive with stars. The city below shimmered with lights of celebration, innovation, and hope. Citizens cheered for their leaders, for their resilience, and for the unusual human who had proven that courage and ingenuity could save worlds. As night fell, the palace remained a beacon of light in a galaxy that was vast and unpredictable. But within its walls, a lesson had been learned. Unity across differences, intelligence combined with strength, and the courage to act in the face of danger could create a future that no enemy could destroy. The princess, the queen, and the human captain stood side by side, looking out into the universe. They had faced betrayal, danger, and impossible odds. They had survived. They had triumphed. And together they would guide Zerathia into a new era, one of hope, strength, and alliance across worlds. The galaxy awaited, full of challenges, mysteries, and adventures. But for the people of Zerathia, for Princess Saren, and for Captain Elias Kane, the future had never looked brighter. Together, they would write a story that would inspire generations, of courage, unity, and the extraordinary possibilities that arise when humans and aliens work side by side.